Hi, I'm Nick Palmachano.
And I'm Matt Finney.
And this is the Bad News Network. Captain's Log, Stardate 74027.6. It's week 2 of not having a monologue, and I need to kill some time.
Perhaps with Lincoln logs?
I've built everything there is to build.
Practice log functions?
There's a limit to my desire to do math as X approaches infinity.
Log rolling.
I'll leave that to J.R. Salzman.
Make a Yule log?
Out of season.
Become a demagogue.
We have a lot of them already, and while it kind of rhymes with log, there's no L, so you kind of broke the theme up.
Look for the Loch Ness Monster?
I think we've killed it.
So write an epilogue.
Yes! Economists have done the math, and while it is absolutely true that individual citizens and small businesses are losing a lot of money right now because of COVID, it is also true that cities and states are about to take a bloodbath, losing as much as $1.5 trillion this year. With reductions in parking fees, speeding tickets, event sales, various rental fees, and of course, sales and income tax being significantly reduced, cities and states are scrambling to make up the 8.8% expected shortfall. That might mean a reduction in services or a higher tax rate at the local and state level. Like most of you, I was just thinking, man, with this global pandemic and the constant fear of death and lost income, I'd really like to chip in just a little more money to help out the government that has mismanaged this at every single level. I bet you are too.
Las Vegas, Nevada has announced a new mask initiative under Mayor Steve Sisolak. Sisolak's nanny initiative to catch heretics, or snitch for short, is designed to empower citizens as mask compliance officers, since there aren't enough police running around to harass people 24/7 to keep their mask on. Sisolak addressed the need for the program, stating that what goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas. Unless you're a dirty non-compliant, and then we'll be on your like COVID on a Navy carrier. He's taking the initiative seriously, placing Dolores Umbridge in charge of it. Umbridge, originally from England, has spent the last few years as undersecretary dealing with what she calls the dark viruses. Her employees in their pristine brown uniforms with starched collars say that she excels at breaking people down until they confess. We're making a real difference out there, said Sisolak. Of the 178 people hit with notices of correction, 57 have complied, 118 have disappeared completely, and 3 have been turned into nudes.
Days after Portland's Wall of Moms was dispersed by the police, Portland's own mayor, Ted Wheeler, was hit with some tear gas. Portland police have denied employing any kind of tear gas, but it could have been another agency, or it could have been protesters, or they could just be lying or wrong. The mayor is wearing goggles and a mask and is holding his face as the cloud of peppery death flies over him. You could say the pepper spray assaulted him. As he did, he fell to his knees in pain and did his best platoon impression. He got up fast though, because the protesters quickly turned on him and started telling him he was a real piece of shit. He fled the scene with support from security and locked himself back up into town hall. The protesters, for their part, complained that they were tear gassed for being peaceful, and to show their unhappiness with the event, decided to throw literal Molotov cocktails at the courthouse. That'll show them. You know, Portland sounds like a good time, but it's no Cleveland. Maybe it's time to leave for the Cleve.
A Chinese scientist here in America was questioned by the FBI a few days ago, checking out her visa and looking through her belongings. Immediately afterwards, she hid in the Chinese embassy and has not left since. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Wenbin was flabbergasted and replied to the US saying, "What? Spies in the US? What, never? Never has China ever been so shady." Honestly, the only thing we can really think of where China even acted remotely shady, let me see. Stealing IP. Hong Kong. Building a first strike EMP capability that can melt the US power grid. Building fake islands and trying to claim international waters. Non-stop cyber attacks. Lying about the coronavirus. Buying up the world's PPE. Selling it back to the world at 9 times its value. Pretending that the American military started the coronavirus. Harvesting people's organs. Internment camps. Enslaving the Uyghurs. Threatening to annihilate Taiwan. Disappearing people. Tiananmen Square. One-child policy. Devaluing their currency. Stock market manipulation. But you don't have to take my word for it. Take his.
Donald Trump, don't trust China. China is asshole.
Anyways, the so-called scientist was discovered to be a part of the China's People's Liberation Army and was stealing vaccine information and research and sending it back to the Chinese state. The embassy that she fled into was seen taking files and throwing them into the trash and literally lighting them on fire. Because this was also shady as the police were called, but they were denied entry. When asked what they were throwing into the flames, the Chinese ambassador said, "These sick beats," and proceeded to flow rap for the next hour.
As if that wasn't enough, the UK has just announced that they spotted a Russian satellite injecting a new object into space. The current theory is that they are testing a new anti-satellite technology. This sentiment echoes concerns in 2018 when a Russian satellite got dangerously close to a US one. US General Jay Raymond says there's significant evidence that Russia has been testing non-destructive weapon systems in space. These actions line up with the Kremlin's military doctrine, specifically put in place to put US space assets at risk. And it appears that the Russians have realized that if they don't acknowledge any of this, people can't get all that mad at them. So they've opted to say nothing about the matter. Looks like a job for Space Force. I know it's kind of funny, but it honestly looks like we need Space Force because they're legit attacking our satellites.
Ghislaine Maxwell faces charges for recruiting, grooming, and ultimately sexually abusing children as young as 14 while being an accomplice to known pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. This week, President Trump wished her well in facing her upcoming charges. This, of course, kicked the hornet's nest of the mainstream media and anti-Trumpers and created a whole world of opinions on exactly what this means. President Trump continued by saying, "I've met her numerous times over the years, especially since I lived in Palm Beach. I guess they lived in Palm Beach, but I wish her well, whatever it is. I don't know the situation with Prince Andrew, just don't know. Not aware of it." Trump dodged any further questioning, but did say he would attend her funeral to be held next week if invited.
Earlier this month, the Washington Redskins decided that they were going to change their franchise name due to the racially insensitive nature of their current name. That, of course, left them with the big decision: what to name the team. While changing the name is a good idea because of its racially charged undertones, it's important to note that 9 out of 10 Native Americans had no issue with the name. We bring this up only to illustrate that the Washington Redskins could have told everybody, hey, we've decided to change the name in 2021, but in the meantime, we have to figure out what we're going to call the team. Washington, however, announced that the team name would be changed immediately, and they would be telling us the new name on Thursday. Cool! Lots of good ideas immediately surfaced. The Washington Natives, for example, would keep the team's long-standing connection to Native Americans. The Washington Red Tails is also a popular option, and it would connect the team to the Tuskegee Airmen. A really shitty idea is to name the team the Washington Senators, because why would you want to name your franchise after a wholly ineffective body that seems to do nothing? But at least it makes sense. On Thursday, the soon-to-be former Washington Redskins came out with their big announcement. They couldn't come up with an idea for the team name. So for this season, they will be known as the Washington Football Team. That's what they came up with. That was their idea. That's as good as they could do. The owner of the now Washington Football Team had this to say: "All we could think of was racism, so we opted to choose nothing, buying our time to get a better name." Now, a whole bunch of hipsters that have purchased t-shirts to this effect are furious. Chaz Brockingham, sipping a homemade IPA from quarantine, had this to say: "I've spent my whole life buying t-shirts that mock America's love affair with sports, And now my regional football team t-shirt is not only unironic, but it's probably trademark infringement. It's not that hard to create a cool sounding name. Seattle's new NHL team, literally at the same time that this announcement was being made, announced that they were going to be called the Seattle Kraken. That is how you do it. Personally, I kind of hope that they just forget at the end of the year and they stay the Washington football team forever.
To add to the ever-growing list of odd and unfortunate events in 2020, we now have a can shortage. Cans are apparently the next COVID victim, as demand for the product has risen dramatically during the quarantine. According to Paula Gatza, the PhD, this demand has been created by numerous people working from home and needing a nice spritzy drink. Normally people would be doing keg stands or drinking out of solo cups at bars, but these days people are drowning their sorrow by themselves with a nice 30 rack. There's a simple solution. Buy a kegerator, you savages, or just commit to the hard stuff like a real adult.
Bruno Macedo, a Brazilian CNN reporter, was mugged on air while reporting about environmental concerns. The correspondent was reporting on the rising levels of the TD River when she was robbed of 2 cell phones on air. Even though the man pulled a knife, her cameraman was unfazed by what was happening on air and simply continued to film. The anchor also continued to speak as if nothing was happening. She was later interviewed by her own station and had this to say: "You guys really suck." And they do, in fact, suck. This week it was announced that worldwide food giant Kentucky Fried Chicken, aka KFC, is doing research in a Russian lab to create 3D printed chicken. I can't wait to have a computer print me out 27 spices. Russian company 3D Bioprinting Solutions is going to be the producer of KFC's Meat of the Future concept. They will print chicken meat by using a fusion of actual chicken cells along with plant cells. KFC's project aims to recreate the texture of chicken nuggets while simultaneously infusing it with 27 flavors. Honestly, at this point, just plug us into the Matrix and be done with it.
Now that summer is in full effect and temperatures are reaching record highs around the world, one business is doing its best to curb the effects of global warming. Burger King has recently announced that it plans to change the diet of its cows to reduce the amount of methane they release. So in layman's terms, they're making cows fat less. When I think of all the things that we could do to reduce emissions around the world and help cure global warming, cow fats was really low on the list, but if it helps, it helps. Burger King said that it worked with notable professors to add 100 grams of lemongrass that apparently will reduce the amount of methane by 33%. Since the formula is basically open source, Burger King is hoping that all the other restaurant chains will follow suit and help fight global warming. But some people have already started arguing that this might make the famous Whopper taste different, to which Burger King responded, "Don't have a cow. You can still have it your way, even though the cows can't." Also, if you're getting genuinely upset about cow fats, you need medical attention, and I wish you the best. This enviro-political move has set the stage for the long-awaited franchise wars that the Prophecy Demolition Man stated in 1993.
Major General Jody J. Daniels will be promoted to Lieutenant General and will be taking command of the U.S. Army Reserve. This is the first time a female has been placed in this position. Daniels was previously the commander of the 88th Readiness Division. Major General Daniels has served for over 36 years in both the active and reserve components and has multiple deployments to her name. Retired General Mark Quantock commented that she is a terrific officer and will excel at this position. She holds an MS and a PhD from the University of Massachusetts and sits on the DARPA ISAT review board. Basically, she's wicked smart. Congratulations, ma'am. It's good to finally see a Jody in the military that isn't a piece of crap.
A grisly triple homicide occurred last weekend in Lake Wales, Florida, when 3 men on a fishing trip were shot at close range. 3 suspects have been arrested in connection with those murders. 2 brothers, Tony and William Wiggins, and Tony's girlfriend, Mary Whitmore, have been arrested. Police reportedly found a receipt from a Dollar General that the 3 had been at previously and tracked them all the way back and was able to see them on the security tapes. When questioned, all 3 suspects gave inconsistent stories. This tipped the police off to follow up. The murder trio apparently overheard Damian Tillman, Kevin Springfield, and Brandon Rollins talking about their fishing trip that they were on. Upon leaving the Dollar General, the friends were followed by the murder trio all the way until they reached their fishing spot. Once the group was out and about their vehicle, apparently, Tony Wiggins jumped out of his vehicle and attacked Kevin Springfield, saying he stole his truck. When the other friends, Tillman and Rollins, saw Springfield getting assaulted, they rushed to his aid. It was at this time that Travis Wiggins drew his gun and shot the three friends, and then jumped in his truck and drove off. Rollins didn't die immediately and was able to call his father, who found him at the scene, but unfortunately too late, as all three men had died before help could come. It's then reported that the Wigginses and Whitmore then went to a McDonald's, ordered a whole bunch of burgers, and then went to a car wash to clean off their truck. Tony Wiggins is charged with first-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and possession of a firearm and ammunition by a convicted felon. The sheriff's office stated that Tony Wiggins has 230 felony charges with 15 convictions and has been in and out of state prison twice. Now, I'm all for giving someone a second chance, but the 229th chance might be a bridge too far. Like, at no point was a judge looking at Tony and being like, hey, says here that your felony count is in the low to mid hundreds. You probably shouldn't be out in normal society anymore. It's not us, it's you. The other two, William and Mary, are facing charges of tampering with evidence and accessory to after the fact of a capital felony.
Chile has announced that they will be using dogs to sniff out the coronavirus on infected humans. Their hopes are that it will allow for a faster reopening process for the country. They have enlisted 3 golden retrievers and a very saucy Labrador to begin training at a Chilean sniffer school. The idea is that persons infected with COVID will emit an organic compound that allows the dogs to pick up the scent. The dogs, once they identify that odor, are cleared hot to shoot the person on sight. Currently, there's no evidence that dogs can actually smell the coronavirus, so this could actually be an elaborate ruse on the part of dogs to take over the world. But let's face it, they'd probably do a better job.
Focusing on what's really important in the world, Japanese engineers have built a 60-foot tall Gundam robot. The robot is famous for its many, many appearances in many, many Japanese films and cartoons. So lots of people are very excited to see the end product. There was supposed to be a special preview this month, but the event was postponed due to COVID. The public did get a special sneak peek, however, as the engineers tested the legs, arms, and torso of the robot. This is a pretty amazing feat of engineering. The full debut of the robot is expected to be in a few weeks in Yokohama, and according to reports, it can move its arms, bow, and even walk. Exciting stuff. But seriously, if they're building that thing to fight some Pacific Rim giant-sized lizard and they're not telling us, Japan, you need to tell us. Some of us have a bingo card to win. Stop holding out.
Kanye West has been on a Twitter rampage lately that has drawn national attention. To sum it up as far as I cared to read about it, he's withdrawing from the presidency, he hates his mother-in-law, and he has mixed feelings about his family. Honestly, outside of running for president, probably about half the country can relate to that. Not me though, because my mother-in-law is the shit. He has since deleted almost all of his tweets, and the PR campaign from the Kardashians has begun. I'm gonna have to read this next line because Matt wrote it, and it's very important to him that I hit it perfectly. With all of the lights turned toward Ye, many say he ran away. But it's clear he just had his tweets locked down. At least that's what we've heard through the wire. It's amazing. It was funny because it was a conglomeration of many of his songs. Also, Kanye didn't kill himself.
On Thursday, Judge Loretta Preska ordered that over 80 documents in the case against Ghislaine Maxwell be released to the public. Despite Maxwell's plea for a gag order stating that the records were personal and even embarrassing, Preska stated that the records will be released to the public, and this will include Epstein's flight log. There is a caveat, however, in that all the names will be redacted. So it's not the falling hammer we were hoping for, but it's a move in the right direction. Maxwell has been denied bond, saying that she's a flight risk while she's facing down her 35-year prison sentence. And apparently her and the people close to her have voiced their concerns that she might be killed, much like they believe that Epstein was killed. And I'm sure everyone can agree that it's dumb at this point for anyone in office to say that he wasn't. To make matters more concerning, earlier this week, federal judge Esther Salas, who was assigned to a financial civil case against Epstein, and her family were attacked by a man dressed as a FedEx driver. Her 20-year-old son was shot and killed, and her husband was critically wounded. Salas herself avoided assassination. So the stakes are as high as ever in a case that could potentially name world leaders and elites in the biggest pedophile ring in history. That being said, anyone who had Maxwell dead in 2 weeks or under, you are out of the dead pool. Thanks for playing. Week 3 crew, you've got the spotlight.
And finally, in Florida Man news, a tale of two Florida men. The first Florida man decided to pull a gun on someone that asked him to wear a mask. That is aggressive. That's aggressive by any standards. Maybe tone it down a little bit. Now you've got a felony, you're going to prison, and you'll be wearing a mask there. And the second Florida man was stopped because he was standing in the middle of a highway doing acrobatics and cartwheels to stop traffic as part of a protest for Black Lives Matter. Well, when the police grabbed him, he managed to wiggle his way out and then cartwheel aggressively away from the police. This lasted for a short period of time where he was apprehended once again. Nevertheless, I give him 10 points for style. And with that, I'm Nick Palmisano.
And I'm Matt Finney.
And this is the Bad News Network. Our news is at least as bad as the news you're getting already, and I just want to give a shout out to the New England football team. May they do well on this season. As always, you can use the code BNN at rangerup.com for 25% off. Have a great weekend.